Why are my parents doing this to me?
You can't just put me in a wedding dress.
Why not? It's Vera Wang.
I played a clip from an episode of Supergirl where she encounters Mytzpltz, as she calls him there, thankfully for most of it. She's pursued by a traditionally attractive Mr. Mytzpltz. I struggle. The struggle is real, no matter how many times I listen to it. It's one of those words that, you hear a word sometimes and it goes in, and then it leaves, and then it's gone. This episode would not leave me alone because it's actually loosely based off of a Silver Age comic book story. Very loosely. Action Comics 291. In some ways, what they do in the episode is a bit of an upgrade, and for most of that, he's essentially awkwardly trying to woo her with Q-like powers. The Silver Age comic story aims for wacky, but ends up veering and careening into sad by accident. You know you're intrigued. The hooks are in you now. Greetings, comic lovers, and welcome back to Casually Comics, the channel where we chat all things comics, from news, comics new and old, to history to anecdotes, really wherever our whims take us. People getting married. It's a well that's returned to quite often in DC's Silver Age. Usually on this channel we're talking about Lois Lane when it comes to these outings, but today we're taking a detour over to Supergirl. We have a whole Supergirl playlist, so it'll fit right in there. Action Comics 291 comes to us from 1962. Supergirl at this point was a backup story running within the series. Her story was entitled The Bride of Mr. Mytzpltz. Yes, I'm making an effort to say it this time. Growth. It's a character arc. The story is written by Jerry Siegel with art by Al Plastino. Letters by Milt Snapin. This one's a bit different in the archives of the imp from the fifth dimension that tries to marry Superman's supporting female cast. It's different in that in this one he doesn't automatically start out trying to marry Supergirl, which was the case when we took a look at the story where he wanted to marry Lois Lane in one of the stunning instances where she rejected a proposal. But that was probably because it was the Golden Age and not the Silver Age. Silver Age Lois is always a different story. Even when Mixie turned Jimmy into a Wolfman, he started off trying to woo Lucy Lane. That was the point of Wolfman Jimmy, although Wolfman Jimmy is always a payoff. Now the teaser panel for this story lets you know to brace yourself for discomfort right off the bat.
Please don't make me marry Mr. Mytzpltz, the crazy imp from the fifth dimension, Dad.
Where's your gratitude, dear? Mr. Mytzpltz has made alluring me your Kryptonian parents magically live again, though we died years ago, and we have superpowers now, like you. So seamless, in no way clunky exposition. In fairness, at this point in Supergirl's history, it was possible to not know her backstory, so they would need to impart some of it, potentially. It's still very unnatural sounding, and I always find that amusing. Kara, listen to me, your magically revived father. I have powers now. The story opens with Kara taking her adoptive parents back to the Midvale orphanage to give some gifts to the children there. Linda Lee, now Linda Lee Danvers, doesn't keep her Supergirl identity a secret from her adoptive parents, or foster parents as they're labeled in this story. The Danverses are super nice and supportive. They're very awesome. And they liked her even before they found out she was Supergirl.
We love you so. Our lives would be so empty without you.
Yep, totally fine. Nothing bad is gonna happen at all. People can say that in stories and then nothing happens.
Take care of yourself, darling, while patrolling Earth during Superman's visit to another planet.
So Supergirl is making the rounds because Clark is off in space doing something. Maybe he's just organizing souvenirs to give to Jimmy to see which one is gonna cause the most mayhem.
Mom and Dad love me just as much as my real Kryptonian parents did before they died. Nothing could ever part me from my foster parents.
You hear that, universe? Nothing. Nothing except a bored imp from the fifth dimension who initially pops into her dimension just to mess with her. This is cause it's bothering him that she's a goody-goody like her cousin. She's guiding a plane to an atomic test area when he just turns the pilots into bizarros, who thankfully just start trying to fly the plane to the ground, and they don't, detonate the nukes that they're carrying. She's able to divert the planes and save the pilots who have hopped out, but Mixie isn't done yet. He's turned the entire city of New York into bizarros.
Yipes, you're throwing away the cereal and eating the box.
This looks like a job for Supergirl. No serial crimes on her watch.
Oh no, that bizarro postman is biting a dog. Ugh. Instead of keeping the peace, the bizarro United Nations Assembly is trying to create war.
I know it says choke. I said choke at first, but I feel like I should actually just make a choking sound, so we're gonna go with that instead. But it says choke, and that's amusing. Also, one of those scenarios was not like the other. Nobody was biting anybody at that last meeting. Stood out. Mixie, of course, can't resist revealing himself. It's no fun if the people don't know who's messing with them. Supergirl knows who he is and how to get rid of him, but first, of course, she has to trick him. He's gotta say his name backwards, and that's harder than it at first appears. Especially because her plans aren't great. Her first one is going to a football game and telling the audience she's gonna throw some nonsense letters up and they need to yell out what they spell. When I say weak,
You say sauce. Weak.
He has to say his own name. How would that even have worked? He doesn't have to say it just because the crowd's saying it. Swept up in the moment of the enthusiasm. He turns the cards into snakes anyway. She tries a mind control helmet, which yes, is on the darker side. She's very desperate. I mean, her cue cards failed, and in between this he made some giant bees. Did anybody ever stop that Bizarro Council? Is there a war on?
It doesn't work because 5th dimension magic trumps Silver Age science.
And Supergirl gets big mad.
I'll tell you what I think. You're an irritating, aggravating, annoying pest. I hate you. You're the greatest creep there ever was.
Well, too bad being yelled at is what does it for Mr. Mixie. He's in love. My, but you're beautiful when angry. A strange thrills tingling up and down my itty-bitty spine. It must be love. Marry me, beloved. They have a cream for that tingling. How do some of these things make it past the code? Mad lads, the lot of them. Yes, also every time Mixie has a different voice. It's the magic of the 5th dimension and me being indecisive about it. Kara says a firm no, hard no, not into it, and so he brings her parents back to life, her Kryptonian parents. And they seem to be her actual parents, not replicas, but actual versions he's manifested with his magic. Supergirl is overjoyed, but also considerate enough to make sure that the readers know their names.
My real parents, Zor-El, Allura, alive.
My daughter. I can't. I should just say choke. The noises are so much worse. There's a lot of choking happening this issue. The issue that recaps Supergirl's backstory as it stood at the time for those who may not have been aware. Supergirl is low-key lightly breaking the fourth wall to tell the audience this because she's not talking to her parents. Hey, remember when you gave birth to me on Argo City, that piece of Krypton that had broken off with an air bubble around it? Good times. Supergirl then catches her parents up on her life and also fills them in about how they have superpowers, and she's just having fun teaching them how to fly and hanging out with them. She's so excited she takes them to meet her foster parents, the Danverses. And then there's a reality check. With her parents alive, there's no real reason for her to stay with the Danverses. Thank you for all you've done for Kara. But now that she's our daughter again, she won't be living with you. You can't mean that. We love Supergirl. We can't bear to be parted from her. Also known as choke.
Stop arguing, please. Don't make me choose between you. I love both sets of parents.
Seeing how upset she is, the Danverses say that they won't come between her and her real parents. Real.
I had to give in, Fred. I couldn't bear seeing Supergirl suffer, torn between two loves.
Here comes the bride, such whimsy. Supergirl heard them because she has super hearing, so she's still devastated. Supergirl takes her parents to see the Fortress of Solitude, where her dad just starts concocting something in a test tube. When she asks him what, he just says to trust him. Is this the origin of the Zor-El who would make his daughter a weapon to kill Kal-El? It really feels like it. Mixie's back, and true to his word, now that he's there, they're gonna get married because he brought her parents back to life, so she owes him. Icky. He says he was off messing with Atlantis. I wonder how Aquaman was dealing with that. Probably threw the Aqua Baby at him, which is what his son was called for far too long. But the Aqua Baby had some intense powers. He was the Gohan of the sea.
But Dad knows I don't love the imp.
Yes. That's the only thing that's wrong here.
Why are my parents doing this to me?
Why is this comic doing this to me? Why are there so many lines that just say choke? But before the ceremony, Zor-El spikes the punch with his mystery tube juice and says they all need to have a toast. It's Kryptonian custom after all. And after they have that toast, he demands that Mixie say his name backwards, and boom, he does, because it turns out that that was Kryptonian truth serum that he made really quickly. Do they all know how to do that? Do not take an open drink from Clark. With Mixie disappearing, her parents vanish too, because his magic is gone and that undoes their existence. And in this time period, when he left and his magic wore off, everybody forgot except for Superman and Supergirl, because as they say, they have super minds. Supergirl figures that her parents, knowing that they had been materialized through the imp, knew they could vanish whenever he did, and so concocted the plan to get Kara back with her foster parents. At home, the Danverses remember nothing, but Kara does, and she's moved by their sacrifice. She ends on a thought, potentially imagining a, well, imaginary story, as they were called at the time, or maybe a sequel. She wonders what it would have been like if she had traveled the galaxy with her parents. Oh boy, nothing says wacky romantic comedy hijinks than having to choose between your birth parents and your adoptive parents. This is a story that can benefit from being treated more seriously because there are some genuine kernels of emotional depth here. Conflict is very believable. You feel bad for Supergirl as she's given something she truly wants, but she's also found happiness in her new life. There's a genuine push and pull as to who she should go with. The Mixie shows up to harass woman plots plots tend to work better when they remain in the zany cartoon realms. When they stay in the whole how are these ladies gonna outsmart this annoying imp and you know that they're going to at the end. This one introduces a much more overt element of emotional manipulation, and the fact that her parents don't clue her into what they're planning makes it particularly distressing. Not to mention them going all, you have to listen to your father, go and get married, really highlights her age. The story ends up being darker than it intends to and feels like it completely pivots from its starting point. It almost feels like the marrying her was tacked on, which is stunning for the Silver Age. Probably wasn't, but it doesn't feel like the smoothest transition from I'm turning the world into bizarros to I manifested your parents because you yelled at me and that's hot. Yell at me, mommy. It certainly stands out from the other marriage stories of the time a little bit. Now, some may say it was not intended to be so intently analyzed and was simply meant to be a quick reaffirmation as to why the Danverses are awesome and how the status quo for Supergirl is good, plus provide a quick recap of her origin. So for some, it may have done exactly as was intended, just a quick throwaway Supergirl adventure, plus with some kernels for maybe a story that people might want to explore more. However, that question it asks at the end does open the door to thinking about Kara's parents more. I also fell into a pit wondering, did they not feel like they were real people since they were created by magic? Did Kara tell them about the backwards name thing? They would have felt more on par with the Danverses if they had highlighted that they were sacrificing existing again to maintain Kara's happiness. I guess that's meant to be inferred. This story could be a blink and you miss it. And yet it was used as the foundation for a Supergirl episode on the CW series, early season Supergirl, where they played more with some of the sillier aspects of Supergirl's lore. Season 2, episode 13, and briefly at the end of episode 12, start off introducing a Mixie who appears a bit different than usual depictions.
They call me the interdimensional man about town. It doesn't matter where I'm from, sweet cheeks. So let's get this knot tied.
This episode takes a lot of liberties when it comes to the Action Comics story, mostly for the better. It centers these shenanigans around a general Valentine's Day episode, and it strives to maintain a largely comedic tone to the proceedings. It does this a couple of ways, by making the scenarios very outlandish and also by having a very aggressive, playful soundtrack underneath most of his scenes. It also wants you to be able to say his name.
Mytzpltz. It's spelled like it sounds.
This episode plays a lot with having Mixie make pop culture references and keeps him for the most part in the realm of annoying yet non-threatening. It also strives to give Kara agency in the situation, deliberately outlining it at points.
Look. I'm flattered, but I'm not gonna marry you, Mytzpltz.
He specifically states that he can't make her fall in love with him, that's why he has to woo her and impress her with his Q magic.
Okay, I'm sorry. I came on strong. I'm just enthusiastic.
The episode is also kinda sorta trying to make you believe that he has a chance, even though you never really think that he does. But it wants you to at least potentially be able to get to a place where you could conceive that he does. They also do make an attempt to make his interest appear genuine, but misguided because of his abilities. And they do succeed in making Mon-El really annoying this episode, so that helps.
I've come to challenge you, Mytzpltz.
A Daxamite duel. But I've had one of those before. For Kara's hand?
Yes.
To the death?
Yes.
I accept.
Good.
They do keep some vestiges of the original denouement in that Supergirl does agree to marry him, and they incorporate the Fortress of Solitude by having it be the focal point of the climax. She even shows up drinking orange juice. I thought for a second they were going to go the truth serum route. She was just gonna walk up and be like, drink this orange juice. With all the other things that happened in that episode, I would believe it. But no, she ends up tricking him into spelling his name backwards in Kryptonian to stop the Fortress from self-destructing. Also, they get very Silver Age with this.
Please, Supergirl, I'm literally begging you. Don't do this. I'll do anything. You want world peace? You got it. I can make that happen. Just don't kill yourself. The world needs Supergirl.
Then leave, bro. Yeah, they spend time specifying that he couldn't stop somebody from killing themselves, which is just, that opens up a whole can of worms, doesn't it? They even managed to make you feel a little bit for Mixie, maybe, if you can stomach these types of plots at all. Some find them very cliched, annoying, played out, or just problematic, no matter how they're presented.
I wanted someone to love me.
Next time, try not being a world-threatening stalker. Cause as mentioned multiple times in this episode, he is stalking her. He even mentions it, that he's been watching her from across dimensions. But does he have the equivalent of a Lois Lane room? Because if he doesn't, it doesn't count. You may have noted that they changed Mixie's appearance for this episode. The change does alter the tone a tad. Miles will vary on how one feels about that and whether it's a positive or a negative. But Peter Gadio, who initially played the role, did discuss it in an interview back in 2017. He stated, yeah, I snuck some quotes in here. Surprise end quotes. I was as surprised as anyone. What they've done is rather cool. Whenever you are bringing in a new character, you have to think, how has it been done before? Do we want to be traditional? Do we want to put our own spin on it? They did a perfect synergy. They kept his essence true to what has historically been this character. There are his maniacal, impish qualities and playfulness, but they changed his appearance. The main reason I think they did that was to make him more modern and relevant to the Supergirl world, and also to have the potential that he could be a legitimate suitor. Shots fired. They wanted it to be a pretty interesting suggestion. I mean, why not? This guy has the ability to do anything. If you find him handsome as well, which hopefully Kara does, well, why not go for it? So many reasons. Lots of reasons not to go for it with omnipotent beings. This logic does track, but in season 5 they would recast the character when they brought Mixie back, which also makes sense, but at the same time wasn't strictly necessary either. Mixie can look like anyone, so it does track that he would alter his appearance to woo Kara, even though it also stands to reason that he would be arrogant enough not to. The recast recontextualizes the first appearance in the series in not the best light. Both can work, and to Supergirl's credit, the explanation is plausible. Season 2 Supergirl and Season 5 Supergirl are different beasts. They use Mixie in a more traditional trickster role in the series later on, and they kind of do a redemption thing. But even with the recasting, they never achieved the design of the Superboy TV series. How dare they even attempt to stand where he stood? Look at this! Look at this level of commitment! Bask in Michael J. Pollard. So yes, Supergirl almost marrying Mr. Mytzpltz. It shouldn't be hard. I know it shouldn't. Some people write it out phonetically in the comments every time. It's not. It won't. I'm sorry. If you like seeing comic storylines adapted, the episode of Supergirl is worth checking out to see how the two compare. It's not a good episode per se, but it is a fun one if you can stomach the many Valentine's cliches. Can you tell Hamilton was super popular still when they filmed this? And the other plot lines are coherent enough so you can jump in at episode 13 and not be that confused. It's a solid update of the story for those who can stand the base plot. It ups the fun factor, adds nuance to both characters, and omits some of the while interesting, slightly darker elements of the original tale, while still keeping a smidge of dark edge for Mixie. The comic book weddings keep on giving. What do you think of this one? What's a comic book story turned adapted episode that you enjoy? Of anything, tell me. Which version of Mixie do you enjoy? Give me your thoughts on the original Action Comics plot. And while you're down there telling me things, do all the other YouTube things. Like, share, comment, subscribe, and hit the bell notification so that you never miss a vid. Thanks so much for taking this time of your day spent discussing comics with me. I always appreciate it. I will see you again soon. Bye-bye. I just realized that all I had to do was shift my shoulders up, and then this would have been draped like this the entire time instead of falling off the entire time. That's really frustrating. Choke!